All right, Mishnah on Zion Amud Aleph, Mishnah at the bottom of 7a. We're on our journey, not a very pleasant one, but the journey of the Sotah, a woman who is in doubt as to her faithfulness after having been warned and then secluding herself with this man about which she was warned. And then she was taken to the local court, which determined that she is a bona fide Sotah. And then she was taken to Jerusalem, either just her and her husband, in Rabbi Yehuda's view, or together with two scholars in the view of the sages. And now she's in Yerushalayim. So where do we go from here? So says the Mishnah. See the big bold letters, Masni. She's Masnisa now, our Mishnah. Hayum Mylin Oisala Bezdin Hagodli Shibir Yerushalayim. They were Mylin means to go up. They would go up with her, ascend to the high court in Yerushalayim. The high court, the biggest court, which had 71 members, which is actually located on Temple Mount. So they would ascend all the way there to the high court in the presence of 71 judges. And they would, for lack of a better translation, pressure her. In the same way that they would put pressure on witnesses who came to testify about a matter for which there's life and death. Right? So whenever witnesses come to a court, we have to investigate and cross-examine to make sure that they are, or to determine to the best of our ability that they're saying the truth. But when it comes to witnesses that are testifying about a matter that could result in life and death, could result in capital punishment. So in addition to cross-examining, we also put a lot of pressure on them. And we start to give them a whole speech of what it means to have blood on their hands if they're lying. And how terrible and horrible it would be if, God forbid, they lied, causing someone to get capital punishment. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin goes through a whole speech that they give him. So likewise here with the Sotah, she's given a whole speech by the court, by the high court, 71 judges. So they give her a whole speech. What's the speech they give her? And they tell her, Biti, my daughter, young girl, Harbe Yayin Oisa, wine can do a lot to somebody. Wine. W-I-N-E, alcohol. Alcohol can do a lot to somebody. Harbe Schaik Oisa, frivolity can do a lot to somebody. Harbe Yaldus Oisa, being young also could do a lot to somebody. Messing up. Harbe Shreinim Haroyim Oisa, bad neighbors can also do a lot to a person.
They're saying this to her.
They're saying this to her. Asi, come clean, do it. Lishmoy HaGadol, for God's great name, Shenichta B'Kedusha, which is being written in holiness, Shelo Yimcha, that it should not be erased, Al Hamayim, in the water. So there's levels of what they warn her about, and I'd like to try to think together about what this might mean in terms of our relationship with Hashem, right? They're trying to pressure her to come clean and say, if she was guilty, that she should admit to her guilt, rather than allow the name of Hashem to be erased, right? Because as we're going to learn, they would write on a parchment the section of the Torah describing the Sotah, and in there is Hashem's name, and then they would put it into water and mix it, and then she would drink that water. So God's name is being erased. So they would tell her, come clean. And first they would give her a bunch of excuses, right? That's what it seems like. First they're giving her a bunch of excuses and saying, it's not really you, right? Wine does it. Frivolity does it. You're still a good girl, but look, this is the way Hashem made us. Hashem made us that alcohol causes us to do silly things, and we can get into a frivolous mode and do silly things. We're childish and we do silly things, and we have bad influence, bad neighbors who can make us do silly things. Right? It's interesting. They don't come and tell her, you're a horrible, terrible person, and you better come clean, or else there's going to be all kinds of terrible consequences. They don't say that here. They don't say, you're going to burn in hell or something, or you're going to die, or something like that. Of course, they're warning her and telling her, you want to avoid this terrible death. But that's not the speech they give her. They don't give her a speech saying, you know that if you're guilty and you drink this, you're going to die. Right? They don't say that. They tell her, they give her excuses.
Well, because she may not.
Well, she may not did because of merit.
Right.
But nonetheless,
Right. No.
What I'm saying is they don't, they can tell her you're going to burn in hell.
They don't focus
on the consequences, punishments. They focus on giving her excuses and tell her, look, it's okay. It happens. People drink wine and they do silly things. People have bad neighbors and they do silly things. People have, they don't say it's okay, God forbid. I'm adding that. But they give her excuses.
Right, that she's not a bad person.
You're not a bad person.
Did something bad.
Correct.
Something
you're not a bad person. There are circumstances that cause you to behave poorly, but you're not a bad person. And you'd be better off if you just come clean. For whose sake should you come clean? For God's sake. Because if you don't come clean, we're going to be erasing God's name in vain. This is the inspiration for a Jew to do Teshuva. Do it for God's sake. Using the metaphor of our relationship with God, right? That we're the woman and God's the man, and we go astray, and God warns us, as it were. So the inspiration for the Jew to do Teshuva is do it for Hashem's sake. You feel that you can suffer the consequences, and you feel that, okay, so I'm not a perfect tzaddik. Do it for God's sake. Hashem's name is being erased. Not just literally in the Sotah, but metaphorically, in our sin, God's name is being erased. Hashem's name is carried upon us, right? We say it on Yom Tov, Shimcha Gadol Kadosh Aleinu Karasa. Your holy and great name you call upon us. Right? In Atav V'Chatanu, that song, Atav V'Chatanu, you chose small people. After I saw you love us, and your great name is written on us, is called on us. And when we sin, we're erasing, as it were, God's name. And the Mishnah is telling us, inspiring us, first of all, telling us, look, your godly soul is perfect. But you have an animal soul, and it engages in all kinds of things. It likes to drink wine, it likes to have a good time, and it makes you do silly things. But you're a good girl. You're a good Jew. And for Hashem's sake, do Teshuva. Because Hashem's name is written on you. That's what they're telling the woman.
Well, what if she says, I'm jumping the content. She says, I'm innocent. That not believe?
If she says she's innocent,
do they erase Hashem's name?
Look, if she says she's innocent, we don't know she's innocent, so we still have to erase Hashem's name. She has to go through it. All right? We have to think of what that means in the metaphor. What that means. And a Jew says, I'm innocent, then we still go through the procedure. We have to think of what that means. Good point. But let's see further in this process. So they tell her, wine does a lot, childishness does a lot, bad neighbors cause, frivolity. Just come clean. You have all these other excuses, all these other things that can cause you to do it. Do it for Hashem's name, who's going to be erased. And then they tell her things, dvarim she'ein kedai l'shemon. They say things that aren't appropriate for her to hear. V'chol mishpachas beis avia, and her family shouldn't hear either. These are the kinds of things that we shouldn't be saying. What are the kinds of things we shouldn't be saying? So Rashi tells us that the Gemara is going to tell us later. That what they would tell her is, they would tell her stories of tzaddikim who messed up and how these tzaddikim came clean. How these tzaddikim came clean and did Teshuva. And this is kind of like the final argument. They say, do it for Hashem's name. But her counter argument is, but I don't want to ruin my reputation. I'm going to admit to a terrible thing. I don't want to. That's going to be your biggest praise. Look at all these tzaddikim. The Gemara is going to tell us about Yehuda and others who acknowledge their mistake, and we praise them for acknowledging the mistake. So do it for Hashem's name, and even for you, coming clean. This is the greatest virtue. Look at all these tzaddikim, and these are the kinds of things the Mishnah says are not usual, not appropriate to say. Why is it not appropriate to say? Because as a rule, we don't try to dig up other people's negative past. People moved on. A guy did Teshuva, right? The halacha is that if a person does Teshuva, you're not supposed to remind him of his negative past. It's not nice. The guy started a new chapter in life, and now you're going to start reminding him of all these other terrible things. So you have all these tzaddikim in history who did Teshuva. Now you're digging up old dirt. Why are you doing that? But if it's going to inspire another person to do Teshuva, then we are going to dig up the old dirt. And even though it's inappropriate to be saying in general, it's inappropriate to be digging up people's dirt, even people who have passed on. But if it's going to inspire another woman to do Teshuva, then we're going to do that. And Yehuda and all the other tzaddikim are happy to have their reputation tarnished if it means it's going to inspire me and you to do Teshuva. It's quite a remarkable thing. So after this whole speech, continues the Mishnah. If she says, I admit, I am unfaithful. I was unfaithful. You're right. I admit I made a mistake. Okay, so now she has to divorce. And what happens is, sheveres ksubasa. So when they got married, there's a contract, there's a ketubah. And the ketubah is that if there's a divorce one day, he gives her X amount of money. But in this case, because she was unfaithful, she doesn't get that money. She forfeits her ketubah. So she has to write a shover. A shover is a receipt. She writes a receipt. She signs a receipt that she hands to the husband. And the receipt states that I didn't take my ketubah because of the circumstances of my unfaithfulness. And that way, the husband has like document that he doesn't owe her anything. So that if she ever comes later in court and demands to get the ketubah, he can pull out the receipt and say, I'm sorry, I don't have to give it to you. So they document the fact that he doesn't have to give her the ketubah. That's what sheveres ketubah means. And then the Yid says, she divorces and she goes on with her life. Okay? But if she says, I'm sorry, I didn't do it. I'm faithful, I'm pure. So what do? She's now taken to the eastern gate. This eastern gate is near Pesach Shar Nicanor, which is at the entrance of the Nicanor gate. Nicanor is the Gemara in Yuma, and Rashi quotes it here, describes the story of the details of which are not important right now, but it's a long, beautiful story about a fellow who was a wealthy man who lived in Alexandria in Egypt, and he donated these two beautiful, big, I believe brass, maybe copper, I don't remember, gold doors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, doors. I don't remember, two beautiful big doors. I don't remember the details. They donated to the temple in Yerushalayim, and he had great miracles that happened to him on the journey, where the boat was rocking and one of the doors was thrown over and it landed on shore. A whole long story. So this is Shar Nicanor. So the gate is named after him, the gate of Nicanor. So over there, it's on the eastern side, and over there, there's an entrance. Now, this entrance, as Rashi explains for us, and the Gemara is going to talk about it in greater detail, the entrance itself, I mean, the space under the door, was not sanctified to be part of the Azara. It was not sanctified to be part of the courtyard. It's between the Ezras Nashim, the women's courtyard, and the main courtyard. And that section wasn't sanctified to be part of the actual courtyard. And therefore, even someone who's impure could stand there. And therefore, there are certain people, as we're going to list in a moment, that have to be purified at the temple itself, but they cannot be in the temple because they're impure. So they would stand in that doorway and put their hands or whatever it is inside to the temple itself so they can go through the purification process. And that's what the Gemara is about to describe. The Mishnah is about to say. Shasham, at this door, Mashkenas Asaitis, this is the place where they would give the site to the drink, the water with the rubbed out ink. And Matar and Asayeldas, a woman who gives birth. The Gemara is going to discuss these things. A woman who gives birth, after she brings certain offerings, she has to go through a process of purification. So she also stands in that doorway. Umatar and a mitzvah, which is a person. A mitzvah is a person who got the spiritual leprosy, right? The tsaras, the skin discoloration, which indicates a certain impurity, and they go through a whole process of purification. And the end of the process is, again, they also stand in that doorway and they also go through a process of purification. This is the tsaras. This person is impure, cannot enter the actual courtyard. So they stand in the doorway, which is not technically part of the courtyard, and he puts his thumbs inside, and they put blood on his thumbs, as Rashi describes, and the Gemara will discuss it as well later.
So they put their arms through the hole or something?
Through the doorway. They put their hands into the door, right? Yeah, because as soon as the blood is taken outside of the courtyard, it becomes impure. So the blood has to be placed on the person while it's inside the courtyard. But this person cannot enter the courtyard. So he stands in his doorway and puts his hands inside. Right?
Is that section called the Israel?
That section is between the Israel's courtyard and between the women's courtyard. It's between those two sections.
Between the Israel, it's right before.
No, I guess no. It's going from the women's courtyard to the Israel's courtyard, I believe.
Yeah.
I think so.
So it's not the Israel's courtyard, it's before.
It's just at the entrance to it. Just at the entrance to the Israel's courtyard. I believe that's where it is. We should look. Well, God willing, on Monday I'll try to find a diagram and share it with everybody. Okay, so at this door she stands there, So after she was in the high court, and they gave her a whole speech about how it's not your fault, these things happen, do it for God's name. There were other tzaddikim who also came clean. Then they bring her to that door, to this doorway. The kohen oichet b'bekadeha, and the kohen holds on to her clothing at her neck, at the like the collar, and he has to tear it to reveal her chest. Now, im nikru, if she ripped the clothing, nikru, rip the clothing, so be it. Vim niframu, if the seams came apart. Actually, Rashi translates a bit different. I saw Rabbi Steinsaltz translates niframu as the seams coming apart, but it seems from Rashi that niframu means just a more intense rip where it shreds, kind of. So niframu, if it ripped, it teared, it shredded, it doesn't matter. He has to pull out her clothing. Ad, to the point, shemagalas liba, to the point that her chest is bare, is revealed. The soiser saira, and they undo the braid that her hair was in. I want to keep it open-ended and over Shabbos to think about what this might mean in terms of our connection with Hashem, right? The warning part where they warned us to do Teshuva, that speaks to us very clearly, right? These inspirations to do Teshuva. But I'd like to see the rest of the process also as part of the Teshuva. This idea of revealing the heart. I have some idea of opening up the person's neshama to the point where his heart is pure with Hashem. Removing the external layers till we reveal the heart. The literal story is they opened up and revealed her chest. But maybe the metaphor is that we have part of the process of Teshuva is to peel back the layers and reveal the part of our heart that's clear with Hashem. Maybe this is where my mind is at, but floor is open. Okay, so the woman her chest is open, is revealed. The soiter side, they undo the braid of her hair, so her hair is now flowing.
I have a thought on that.
Yeah, what's your thought?
Perhaps maybe she was worried about her reputation being tarnished if she would come clean. So they said, "Oh, you're not coming clean. We'll give you something to be shamed about."
Yeah, that's on the simple level.
And
right.
Fair.
Right. So that's right. So,
I don't know. Maybe
right on the simple level, they're trying.
That's like a more harsh.
Yeah.
Way
So
to
maybe.
Get her to, okay, I'm going to come clean.
Okay, so going that way, maybe something like this. You can, in doing Teshuva and opening up your heart, you could do either one of two ways. Either you can voluntarily do so with the inspiration given, or the circumstances are going to be such that your clothing is going to be torn and it's going to be laid bare anyway. So you can either bury your soul on your own, allow it to express itself by being honest in your relationship with Hashem, or, God forbid, there might be a circumstance which will tear your clothing and your heart will be laid bare anyway. Maybe that's what it's saying in line with what you're saying. One's voluntary and one's forced. And one's forced. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, there's different ways you can go about this. I'm just putting it out there. Okay, so let's look at the literal story, right? So now, they tear her clothing, reveal her chest, undo her hair. So she's in a, derogatorily, a shameful state. Rabbi Huda says, if her chest was beautiful, they wouldn't reveal it. Obviously, they don't want to arouse anybody. They don't want to, cause anybody to be looking at her too much. And if her hair was beautiful, then they wouldn't open it up. Okay. Then it continues. So there's the other opinion which says they don't reveal her chest if it was beautiful. I wonder if Rabbi Huda makes a statement so that any kohen could say, "Oh, her chest is beautiful. We're not doing it," as if like a way out of not actually keep putting her through the shame. Rabbi Huda is saying, "Look, you're supposed to do it, but we don't want to do it because it might cause people looking to get too excited. So if it's beautiful, don't reveal her chest." And then every kohen can come and say, "Well, I know there's some people who find this beautiful, so I'm not going to touch it." Right. Maybe Rabbi Huda is doing this as a kind of giving the kohen a way out. I don't know. There's two different opinions here. Interesting to note. So the procedure continues. If she was covered in white clothing, beautiful clothing, then to give her black clothing. If she had golden jewelry, or top of page 7b, or klitois. Klitois is like, Rashi says, like this piece of jewelry that would hang across her neck to keep her like cloak on, kind of chain. So if she had that, she had rings and nose rings and earrings. any jewelry, ma'avirim mina. They take off her jewelry, kedei lenavla, so that they put her into a state that looks not pleasant, shameful state. And afterwards, maybe so her shirts, her clothing is ripped, her chest is bare. They took off all her jewelry, so but they need to keep her clothes on. So maybe chevel mitzri, they bring this strand made of the strands that are on that are on a palm tree. You know, the strands that are at the bottom of a palm tree. Island in Florida, you might know about that. So they would take those strands and they would use that to make a string to hold their clothing on, right? And they would tie it just above her breast to keep her clothing on so it doesn't fall off. But it's being held together in a very shameful kind of state, not like this beautiful state where she had jewelry holding it together. Anyone who wants to come and see her in this state may come and see her. Doesn't say they have to, but they may. It's a public humiliation, hoping that she's going to come clean, just to avoid all of this. Except for her servants and her maidservants. Though they can't come and watch. Why? Because she wants to maintain her sense of pride in their presence, and she'll never admit to fault in the presence of her servants and maidservants. So we don't want them there. Because the whole point of people watching is that she'll come clean. But if she has people like her servants and maidservants who she actually wants, that's a reason for her to maintain her pride and say, no, I didn't do anything wrong. So we don't want them to watch. Okay? And then the Mishnah repeats itself, which the Gemara is going to analyze why it is that the Mishnah repeats itself, by saying, all women can come and watch her. Okay? The Gemara is going to ask, well, didn't you just finish saying anybody who wants to come see can see? The Gemara will deal with that. Shenemar, what's the verse? The verse reads, V'noisru kol hanoshim, v'loi sa'asena kezim nascha. And the left of a woman will be there. It's a pasuk in Yecheskel. The left of a woman will be there, and they won't do like her mistake. So they want other people to see, so other people to learn from a mistake. So it's interesting that the first time when the Gemara said that anybody comes the first time when the Mishnah said anybody who wants to come and see could see, it's to shame her into admission. The second time, it's so people can learn from her. And the Gemara is going to go into this couple. So it's quite a heavy Mishnah, quite a heavy procedure. And if we think about it in the metaphor of a relationship with Hashem, we have to think about all these details. And what this means, that if we, God forbid, stray, like a Sotah, what's the process either that happens to us or that we should be going through to reconcile with Hashem?
How long does she have to be sitting like that with her
I don't think the process happens
chest open?
I don't think it lasts very long.
I heard it. They make her walk around a long time.
Okay, I'm going to leave that open-ended. I don't know the answer. I assume the Mishnah will discuss it. I assume the next part of the Gemara will discuss that. So I'm going to leave it open. I won't guess. Play guesswork. Okay, have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
You too. Good Shabbos.
See you soon.
Down in sunny Florida.